the budget review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as the Chief Administrative Officer for the County of Stettler, I am proud to present the proposed 2025 to 2028 budget, which includes a comprehensive 4-year operating plan and a strategic 6-year capital plan. This budget reflects our commitment to maintaining essential services, responsibly managing inflationary pressures, and preserving the county's long-term fiscal stability. At a time of rising costs and constrained revenue streams, this budget prioritizes sustaining current service levels by carefully managing our reserves. To remain fiscally prudent and to ensure a safety net for future needs, this budget avoids transfers from reserves, choosing instead to maintain their current levels. These reserves are vital not only to safeguard against unforeseen challenges, but also as matching funds for potential grant opportunities, which could significantly benefit our community. Balancing challenges and opportunities, the county continues to navigate financial uncertainty. The Alberta government transitioned into the Local Government Fiscal Framework, LGFF, in 2024, replacing the Municipal Stability Initiative, MSI. While we remain hopeful that the LGFF will address the unique needs of rural Alberta, traditional revenue sources, particularly the oil and gas sector, have not recovered to historical levels. The 35% assessment relief for shallow gas wells introduced in 2019 remains in effect as the provincial assessment model review continues. The property tax exemption for new wells and pipelines will end after the 2024 municipal tax year, presenting a future opportunity for revenue stabilization. Solar and wind power generation continues to grow in the province, which requires extensive review by the municipalities to participate in the provincial approval process that may bring new sources of tax revenue. Given the challenges of inflation and reduced funding, this budget focuses on preservation and readiness. By maintaining reserves, we can ensure fiscal resilience while remaining prepared to capitalize on forthcoming grant opportunities. At the same time, we will continue to invest in our communities and infrastructure, prioritizing road infrastructure improvements to support safe and efficient transportation, expanding rural water lines to provide residents with reliable access to clean, potable water, enhance bylaw enforcement to strengthen community safety, supporting agriculture through improved weed and pest control, and the continuation of our equipment lending program. So, Council, I'd like to pass this off to our Director of Corporate Services, Krista, and I'd like to thank all staff for all the work they put into this budget. It's quite a process. We barely wrap up the previous year, and we start usually in May and go right through the process till we start presenting and workshopping with Council, till we produce the final product, usually 8 to 9 months later. So, Krista?
Thank you, Yvette. So we are presenting a balanced budget here today. Our budget, I'll just make sure I'm on the right page. Budget we're presenting right now has a surplus at the end of the day of $5,247. This includes an operations budget of $29.7 million and a capital budget of $1.5 million. We have cut a lot of the capital out of our budget, as Yvette has alluded to, by making sure that we're paying off a lot of our debt. So we incurred some debt and we're just replenishing reserves as well for some of the stuff that we had purchased in prior years. And I'll address a lot of that stuff as I go through the budget. So I'm just going to go through each department budget and give a highlight as to what the plans and anticipated costs and what we're going to be doing in the future year. And just before I go any further, just as I always give that prelude to, with our budget, though it's a 4-year operations, 6-year capital budget, we only have to approve the 2025 budget. 26 to 28 budgets are there strictly for planning purposes. So council's aware as to what expenses are going forward, and we have that idea. And when we make decisions, we're looking ahead to those costs that we could incur in future years. So I'm going to first start with our general. with our general, it incurs what our taxes and requisitions are going to be. This budget does shows a 5% increase to farmland taxes, as well as a 3% to residential, linear, and M&E. Overall, the increase dollar-wise is a 1.21% increase. One thing that we did identify within the general department for increase and decreases is with the lowering of the Bank of Canada rate, we're seeing a lower interest rate we're going to be receiving on our funds that are in our accounts. So we're not going to see as much investment income. So that was one of the factors that I did want to point out within there. So I'm just going to jump into, mostly it's going to be into the word text. You can see in the budget that we have the breakdown in your package that you have. You can see the breakdown per departments, but I will go into discussing each department. Administration has an increase of 2.42% from 2024 to 2025. Some of those costs that are incurred that we're going to see, or not incurred, that we're anticipating increases for, include election costs. 2025 brings council election upon us. We also have the cost of living adjustment that impacts on our wages. And with some of the capital that we're looking at doing is network and server upgrades. One thing that administration is always trying to do is strengthen departmental operations with a focus on grant application processes and resource optimization. We are really pushing to see what existing grants exist out there and what we can be using and what options we have. And there's been a lot of grant writing going on. And then we've also, as I've alluded to, is allocating funds for building the reserves back up and paying off assets that were purchased in prior years. So I have to highlight on 2025. Within the strategic plan, and the strategic plan was used quite, there's been a lot of work that council's put into the strategic plan over the last 4 months as well. And when we look at this budget, we are tying that strategic plan back in, making sure the issues that council sees are issues that we're addressing within this budget. Reclaiming gravel leases, working on getting a reserve policy that council can approve so we have something to start with that, and continuing reducing energy costs. And that's something we're always looking at. No different than any other organization, we are also feeling the effects of increased inflation costs, and we're seeing that throughout our budgets as well. Is there any questions on administration? Yes.
Is there a line for legal?
Yes, there is.
Something else?
Yeah, legal is there. It's included within our goods and services. But yes, we do have a legal expense included in our budget.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
On the chart wheel,
The utilities line, is that our water department or is that our gas and electricity?
That's our water and sewer departments.
Thanks.
This graph is all by department or by function, not by type of expense.
okay, thanks.
I'm going to go into the council budget. Council budget, there is this increase of 3%. What most of that is made up of is when we looked at this council budget and where we had to go with the election in 2025, there's expenses that we're going to incur with that. So those are including getting new council, existing council up to date with training, as well as software. So we have the right software hardware requirements that council is going to need to do their job effectively. We also looked at some of the costs included with convention expense and adjusted those down from costs that we won't be going to for some of the conventions that we have in the past, but that's an increase of 3%. Any questions on council? All right.
I'd like to make a comment on council though, is any of that 3%, that is not an increase at all in per diems or anything like that, so just that stays the same as last year.
Yeah, per diems have been kept the same in 2025 as prior years, and everything's dependent upon how many meetings are required.
And we did cut a few boards, and we actually cut a couple of, well, a big convention that we're not going to, so that'll have some savings.
Absolutely. When we started the budget process, there was a lot that we had to look and where we had to cut, and every department we went into and cut. So it wasn't as if we made sure one department was getting everything, every department saw cuts. If there's no further questions, I'm just going to keep going. So protective services is the next department. And protective services also includes our emergency management. Emergency management isn't seeing an increase, but protective services is seeing a decrease. There's about a 13% decrease. There's a few reasons for that. On emergency management in 2025, there's a plan to do a full-scale exercise that's going to be with various agencies throughout the Stettler region and ensuring that we are trained and ready to act in the moment that we have an emergency. And we have secured grant funding for that. But with the decrease in protective services is more so to do with there was some changes within that department regarding staffing levels. So we had staff allocated within that department on an administration expense, and that has been moved into the into the administration as opposed to protective services.
We have a question from.
Just comment about the fact that we do the emergency management preparedness for the entire community, including our villages, our summer villages, the town, and us. And I think it should be well known by the people of the county of Stettler that we do it for a fee, but I'm not sure we get the full recovery, but we definitely are the managing partner on that one.
Further to this on protective services, we've been looking at how we've been doing our capital over the last couple of years. We aren't putting in, we pulled any department that has planned and said we're going to do reserve transfers. We've pulled all of those out of the budget for 2025 in order to pay off and to ensure we can keep this at a reasonable level for budget. So we're going to be looking at, so there was a vehicle plan to be purchased in future years. And we're going to be reevaluating which vehicles are where. And we're going to be seeing this throughout every department. So when we do our revised budget in May of 2025, we'll be looking at each department on a more thorough basis as to where we're going with certain capital needs. And just as we change some of these budget lines, we knew we didn't have enough time to do this effectively. So we'll be sitting down with every department in late winter, early spring to ensure that we have the right levels for all services for capital.
Can I just comment on that too? Just on the reserve transfers, and in the past it's happened in several of the departments, which does make it easier for equipment replacement down the road. But in the same sense, we're tying funds up in the current year that could be going towards paying for the capital that we have already. So that was a conscientious decision made by administration and council that we need to get that in line. So when it comes to the equipment replacement, they'll have to be looked at very closely, but that'll have to become part of that budget year at that point, unless we go back in down the road of putting more into reserves.
Right, and one of the things that, Chris is going to be working on with the departments is lifespan of existing vehicles. If you have 4 CPOs, do we need 4 vehicles, or do we shift put people on different shifts and they use the same vehicle? Just some ways to make it more effective and get longer life out of the capital that we do purchase.
Well, and part of this with asset management too is I think that's something we have to challenge, that whole asset management piece when we have equipment that's doing a fully functional job for us. Just because on paper it says that we should be replacing it, I think we really have to be ready to stand up, because that hits us on our audit too, doesn't it?
It does. So the one thing is on our audit, and not so much our audit, but one of the financial indicators, that's the word I'm looking for, that we deal with municipal affairs is they expect that whatever you're putting into capital or whatever you have as depreciation, you should be replacing that on the same level. We won't be meeting that in 2025. We exceeded it in 2023 and 24, but in 25 we will hit that indicator that we aren't replacing.
Councilor
And I take exception to that when municipal affairs puts that indicator on us, because as we go forward as a municipality, we're asked to do more and more, and we continue to have more services added to the bucket of services that we already provide. There's only one way to add to that bucket is you're going to need to get a bigger bucket. And every time you do that, it costs money. And they don't necessarily take that into account. On the flip side of it, that, wait a minute, you're asked to do X, but you're going to have to spend, money to do X, which it's a capital purchase. And then we end up looking like we're offside. It's just more services we're providing. They don't take it into account. And they should, but they don't.
And one of the other things they take into account that they shouldn't is our roads, right? We have roads that were built in 1920 that are probably some of the best roads in the county of Stettler, but they've outlived their usability according to municipal affairs, right? So yeah, they need to take a hard look at that.
And we're not the only municipality that's in that position. The conversation does come up, but it's just when people hear us talking about different things, it is a hard balancing act at points.
Some of the strategic priorities within protective services are bylaw enforcement, animal welfare, traffic safety, commercial vehicle monitoring, rural crime prevention. And they continue to face this on a daily basis. They work through that. Their key projects are going to be increasing community engagement through public education programs and events. And they continue to work with enhancing partnerships with law enforcement to address emergency rural crime concerns and working towards those items that require their attention.
Also too, from a budget item on policing and emergency management, because we handle emergency management piece, in the last 7 years, we have went from 2 CPO positions to 4. And that's to meet the need of what we have to in our community from crime and from emergency management and from other government hand downs. So the staff has fitted very well into our budget has fitted, but it is a required service, but that shows what, we're following what ratepayers have been requesting from crime reduction and all the other pieces. Now with sheriffs going away from truck monitoring and us losing our sheriff's position here, that just puts more emphasis on our CPOs in order to ensure that there's safe vehicles running up and down our roads.
The weights and dimensions are absolutely right. I mean, we don't have that officer. What used to be formerly the DOTs, we don't have anybody based in our community other than, the check stops. You're not going to see these guys as much as you ever did. We need to have somebody still out there making our community safe.
And those vehicles are meeting our school buses and our family's vehicles going up and down the roads, et cetera.
Yeah, as of last week, we have 3 certified officers for weights and dimensions, so they can.
They're all 4 now.
All 4. Okay, I thought we were still missing.
I've seen that they were just away at a course.
Yeah.
They get back to
All trucks and they just finished, so we have 4 now, certified and ready to go.
Is there any further questions on protective services or emergency management?
You're clear to go.
All right, next we're going to jump into planning and development. So this is one of the departments that we're seeing a large percentage increase, but keep in mind that when you have smaller dollars, when they're not, planning and development is 4.42% of the pie, the percentages can look skewed when that is taking place. It's a 16% increase, but really what it is to do with is increased projects. So access planning is one of the big projects that they'll be taking on during 2025. It's to do with the MDP, IDP, which other?
LUB, that's a big one.
I was missing.
Yeah.
And so with those planning projects, it is requiring a lot of resources and time. So that is the big reason that there's the increase on that. Other than that, it is status quo. There is also the still engaging services when we need additional partnerships with other groups. And it does include setbacks to deal with and monitoring with Erskine landfill.
And lest we not forget about the green energy projects that are putting a great deal of load onto our planning and scheduling department also.
And plus enforcement. I mean, we still have, trying to get developments into
Compliance.
compliance. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, and that takes a lot of work from those guys.
And then as you can see within the document, the key projects for planning and development in 25 is the municipal development plan, the land use bylaw review, the intermunicipal development planning, its collaboration with the town of Stettler, as well as road plans for the South Shore Growth Node. So those are huge projects that they're taking on. And one of the capital investment projects is public access at Buffalo Lake. So that is also something that is on planning development schedule for 2025. Is there any further questions or any questions on planning and development? There's none. I'm going to roll into the next department. This is the department we spend the majority of our time talking about operations. You'll see it as public works in some documents. They are interchangeable in our office for names. This budget is seeing a 7% increase from 24 to 25. There was a lot of changes within this department this year. There was a lot of capital. When we originally started the budget, there was a lot of slashing to this budget and bringing back what we thought was fair. In the past past 2 years, we've had 5 new graders as well as 1 rebuilt grader that we've incorporated into our fleet. With that, it involves that we have funded 4 of those graders, out of borrowing. So when we borrow, those funds are coming out of our operations budget for future years. So as opposed to purchasing additional capital to a greater extent of more graders, more trucks, we have taken those budgets and taken them and using that funds to pay off debt that we have with them. In 2024 and 2025, we have done increased crushing as well. So we have flagged that we needed to do additional crushing within the county of Stettler, and we've had our crushers in 2 of our pits getting gravel done. Both pits are now completed. We're just working with the final details on one of them. And then there is some planned crushing as well in 2025. It's really hard when you're in 3 different years trying to remember which year you're in. And we do have planned gravel crushing for the next 4 years, just to meet the demands that we're using for gravel crushing. Our strategic priorities, though, remain the same in operations. We still want to have the same service efficiency and delivery, maintaining that we have our infrastructure sustainability, and making sure we have a proactive approach to maintaining roads, bridges, and paved surfaces. Public Works has also been working very hard with trying to figure out the correct what we need for vehicles, what we need in our fleet, making sure we have the right equipment available when we need it. So they will also be a large factor in our process of building our our asset management programs and making sure that we have a 6-year operation or 6-year capital plan that's going to work for both us and within our budget constraints. We also have community enhancement and ensuring that we're ready for any events that we need to be involved with. Some of the key projects in 2025 include working on the Gadsby Master Drainage Program and creating a paved surface condition table and maintenance program to ensure infrastructure longevity. We also have some bridge replacements to work on and just our ongoing road maintenance and gravel program. We do have some capital that we are still purchasing for 2025 that I wanted to identify. And those include bridge repairs that we have, some bridges that have been identified and bridges that we have received notification that we've got grant funding for. We also have a small plow truck that we'll be replacing, a milling machine and planer for a skid steer, a sweeper broom for the backhoe, 2 parks mowers, a skid steer, an indoor forklift, and a capital one mower.
Just on, going back to talking about our purchases and the greater purchases have been huge over the years. But we had to do that to replace our fleet, not only for maintenance, day-to-day maintenance, but also for major snowfalls, et cetera, what we're kind of sitting through right now, and how the phone rings on that. So I know administration's been working very hard, trying to balance greater beats out and to ensure that we have additional equipment to put out there to get over our road. So that's very difficult to plan for, because it's can be what the little boy shot at times. So but it is something and part of the business that we have to be aware of.
I think one thing of note that the public would probably be interested in is Greg's been working very hard with his staff, and that we will be increasing the greater beats from 7 to 9, and then have the extra floaters for snowstorms, big rain events, things like that. But we're working very hard to right-size our services and to right-size our staff so that we're getting the best we can out of what we have.
Is there other questions on operations, public works? I'm going to roll into the next department, which is agricultural services. And this number, once I kind of looked at it, and first I had a couple of different numbers when I was calculating the variance, but at the end of the day, it actually is status quo. Ag Services had some major purchases in 2024. Those costs are going to come over into 2025 to finish some of them. But the big thing was we did take out any capital purchases we had in Ag Services. Most of their purchases were coming through from reserve transfers from prior years, as well as this year we're seeing that we are now at a full staffing level with the full-time employees, as well as there was some additional chemical that we'd planned to do for 2024. Ag Services, strategic priorities are weed and pest control, environmental management, community support and advocacy. And the key projects for 25 include completion of the lake pathway, including planting delayed by previous drought conditions, as well as enhancement of weed controls along the major waterways to protect biodiversity. They also have continued to work on developing policies and programs to strengthen the county's environmental agricultural framework. They will still be offering workshops and working with other agencies to offer those out to ratepayers and have them available at timely opportunities for ratepayers to go to. Is there any questions on Ag Services? Next, I'm going to roll into utilities. Utilities involves both of our water and our sewer departments. Sometimes it can be hard to distinguish when you've got joint expenses, so we try to do our best to get those broke out 50-50, but we do try to present them together as a unified team because it is the same staffing that is used between both departments, but they are separated within our budgetary needs. This department is seeing actually a 4% decrease in the budget from 24 to 25. The big reason for this decrease is a few reasons. One was capital projects were decreased. We looked at what capital projects were there, and we eliminated some of them just because of the timing and decisions that needed to be made for various ones, as well as the cost was great. And we just knew that they weren't going to be affordable at this time for what was in our budget. And the other thing we did is we've had some changes within our budget over the last couple of years, and we tried to right size and adjust those revenues to be more reflective of what they actually are. We've traditionally been very conservative in our budgeting within revenues, and we tried to get them more reflective of what they have been over the last couple of years. Some of the key projects that are going to be completed in the utilities department is completion of the Botha meter station piping and valves, replacement of some CL17 chlorine analyzers to enhance water quality monitoring, working on the Red Willow drainage ditch improvements for better water management, and sewer connections in Gadsby and installation of new water lines that are required. The replacement pumps for Buffalo Sands and Botha are going to be there to ensure consistent service delivery. And some in Indiana, there's some water main repairs that we'll be doing. We're only looking at doing half that project though in 25. Is there any questions?
So with the pumps for Buffalo Sands and Buffalo View Estates, we didn't have a spare. And so we had the potential to be down for an extensive amount of time, especially everyone's had difficulty sourcing parts. So we've now bought 2 pumps to back up the system that we have. So if one goes down, we put the other pump in, get the other one repaired, and it sits on standby. Just better service.
How does warranty work with that, or do you just eat the warranty? If it's like, can we deal with our vendors and?
We will, like if it's within the warranty period, whichever one goes down, we'll try and get that one fixed. But we just had the potential of the last one, we had trouble getting it. And so we had 3 pumps. I think we were running on 2. Something could have happened where another one went down. People would have been without water. So I said, we need the backup to make sure that we make sure these people get their services.
Yeah, with the exception of our truck fills, all of our distribution systems have backup pumps built in that are warm standbys at the very least. So if we do have an event on one, there's no disruption to water, but then we're left with just one run. So the cold spare on the shelf is to prevent those situations where 2 pumps going down can actually create an issue. And then with the warranty question, we do primarily utilize whichever units are in warranty. We typically run our pumps. We're able to get a lot more life out of them than the warranty typically offers. So by the time we're actually looking at issues, we're well outside the warranty period, but we have really great relationships with local vendors that rebuild our pumps. So right out of Stettler, we're able to do a lot of work, and we're quite happy with the quality we've gotten out of that.
Is there other questions on the utilities department?
Just a comment to our utility department to also does the field work for Shirley McClellan Water. That revenue is shown on that first chart that we looked at.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and that's how the revenue is written in. But yeah, Shirley McClellan is the largest water, as far as length, the largest water commission that's in Alberta for sure, and North America is what we're understanding. So yeah, that's part of these is the charges for running Shirley too. So
You should get in a Guinness World Book of Records.
You can apply for it. If there's no further questions or comments, I'm going to roll into the next department, which is recreation and insurance. So recreation insurance has seen a decrease from 24 to 25 of 9%. And that's really to do with the reserve transfer. So in the past, we've done some reserve transfers for special rec funding, as well as the additional projects that can come up for recreation. So the reserves for future costs that we know we're going to see. Our recreation special project funding had a healthy reserve that we thought we could go a year with not having the reserve transfer, and we could still afford to do the requests that we have on an annual basis. So we decided to eliminate that for 1 year to give that reprieve to save that on the budget. But overall, it's status quo for all of the operations within recreation.
Plus, Krista, we allocated, or council allocated some additional funds to help out with utilities, especially on ice skating arenas through the operational assistance grant.
Any other questions on recreation? Any questions, Councilor?
Have we sent out the letter to our municipal partners in the county rec agreement?
Yes.
Any responses?
No, the new agreement that we did last year had a built-in cost of living increase. And so we sent the letters out to reflect that. So it went from 1750 per capita to 18, I think we rounded it up to. Yeah, it was sticking within the agreement, so.
No further questions? Okay.
That's good.
So next roll into the fire. So Stettler Regional Fire Department. This department, we've seen some changes over the last couple of years within the fire budget. We do have an 11% decrease from 24 to 25 in this budget. And when I looked back at this and analyzed to see where it was, the big thing that I noticed on it was there was some capital in future or prior years that we had incurred, but there was a lot of our operational costs. So we had went through a process of getting all the protective clothing caught up, and that every department was having the protective clothing that they required. And that is near completion now. So we have just about all of them completed, if not near completion.
Yes. If I can just expand on that. So yeah, 24 was definitely an anomalous year. That was the continuation of getting Station 3, which is Tonalda, back running. They started responding in June of 2023 again with a great group of new volunteers. So all of our fire halls, our rural fire halls, are appropriately equipped to the service level that council has established. And so yeah, that 11% decrease is good. We should see a more stable budget moving forward, with the exception, of course, of the capital side of things, which with fire tends to be a bit of a roller coaster, just because we've got a bunch of trucks all bought together, so we end up with every 25 years or so a big balloon and a little bit less in between. But we're not quite at a big balloon yet, but it's coming.
And with the introduction of the county fire chief, we should never see ourselves in that position again where our equipment's expired and not just on bunker gear, but on trucks and everything else.
Yeah, and so the new county chief definitely takes a lot of the responsibility on now directly, which used to be split sort of between the fire chief and the platoon chiefs. And those platoon chiefs were volunteer positions. They got a meager amount for an honorarium for the large amount of work they did. And in January, council will see an updated remuneration policy that the Fire Advisory Committee recommended to put forward. And that will now include recognition for special hours, which will more appropriately compensate for those platoon chiefs that are putting in extra hours, those captains that are putting in extra hours, whilst also being supported by a dedicated county fire chief.
Plus, we significantly upgraded our stations with the air so that everybody doesn't have to fill up the air bottles in Stettler. We now have those stations in Tonalda, in Big Valley, and Bymore can get to Big Valley a lot quicker than Stettler. So all of them now have washing machines, dryers, so that they can properly care for their bunker gear. Our stations are being cleaned regularly by contract personnel. It's great what they've done, and Troy's done a great job with the equipment, keeping an eye on it, keeping the CPEPs up. We're really doing well in that department.
And under Ivan's guidance, it should be.
Yeah, Troy and Ivan have worked very closely together. We've had some fires this year. We didn't see the grass fires that we had the year before, but unfortunately we have seen some fires this year, and nothing but great comments coming out from the people that we've served.
They got the attention they deserved, I think. That was good.
But I know in my area, the volunteer fire department are very happy working with Ivan and Troy. I mean, that seems to be quite a good match, but for them, and I guess in the past that it wasn't quite that way. So this is a good change.
Yeah, we stumbled a little bit, but we got it right.
And that was what I was talking about, was that little stumble. But I think it's so important to get it right. So it was worth it.
Councilor McKay's got his.
No, and I'm just gonna expand on that too, in Denalda, with Troy there, as our county fire chief. And he's been out there many times, and he says he'll continue coming out to meet with the fire. And we're gonna get updated training here all through the winter, so they're on top of this quite well, and looking forward to doing so.
Councilor Nyberg?
And Mr. Chairman, I think the kudos and the hats off to our administration team. Council recognized that we had an issue and that needed to be dealt with, and our administration team, as usual, did just a huge bunch of work, took it on and did a great job with it. And I just can't say enough how proud I am that the County of Stettler stepped up. We recognized there was a problem, and we handed it over to administration, and they like usual, just can't say enough. So thank you very much for that.
So just to finish with the fire, there is some capital that is planned for 2025, and that includes some the brush rapid attack trucks for both Bymore and Denalda. So those ones are both in the reserves, and so we'll be pulling that out of reserves, as well as some upgrading for vehicle extrication equipment for Denalda Station.
Those trucks were also looked at for fit for purpose too, were they not? We've got quite a bit more economical replacement than what our other.
We're locally built and sourced, so.
Okay. Good.
Is there other questions on fire?
No burning questions on mine.
Thank you, Justin.
Mr. Stevens.
So just the closing remarks here. This budget's a reflection of our commitment to fiscal responsibility, sustainability, and community well-being. It underscores the importance of maintaining reserves to navigate financial uncertainties and seize growth opportunities. We welcome public feedback and council's review as we move forward together, ensuring the County of Stettler remains a thriving and resilient community. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out to a councillor or to administration, and we'd be more than happy to help you. Our plan now is that the budget will be available, and we'll be bringing it back on the first January council meeting. I believe that's January 8th. And we'll be looking for that budget to be passed at the January 8th council meeting.
Krista, can you highlight the projected property tax increases for 2025?
So in 2025, we have planned, I'm just going to flip to that page, a 5% to farmland, 3% to residential, linear, and M&E. So that's what the projected in this budget is. Of course, when we do the revised budget, so once we get all of the assessment numbers and we make any of pass our tax bylaw, when we come back in May, we'll be bringing this back to council to determine if that's still what levels we need to be at. But that's what we have projected within this budget and discussed with council in our workshops.
Councilor Stevens.
Do we have any updates on when the province is going to make an announcement regarding their assessment model review? I mean, this is kind of the elephant in the room as far as rural municipal budgets go. That's such a huge portion of our budgets that with a stroke of a pen by higher levels, we could see a huge budget change. So
Well, to
any
date,
update on timing?
yeah, to date, we have no update. I will say in 2019, they started the assessment review. We're still ongoing. Our REIV, and thank God, has been participating in those meetings in Calgary, which I know has taken up a lot of his time, but we've had a voice at that table, and for the province to listen to changes to mature assets, especially in the oil and gas industry, that will affect rural Alberta. I don't know where it's going to come out, if they're going to do something or they're not, but we've been very fortunate to have a voice at the table. Looking forward, if they did do something in 25, we wouldn't see it till 2026. But to date, they've given us no timeline on when they're going to make an announcement.
Review, like this review that I sat through, is supposed to be getting summarized through Christmas break with recommendations going to the premier, which we're not quite sure on next steps. If that group will be presented that, which really it should be. Is once you've sat through all those sessions, the recommendations should maybe be ran past that group first. But we'll see where that falls out. That's a request RMA is making on that. But I do, the one part which we show our income, that income pie chart's got, I think it had three or four pieces of pie. And I really would like to show on that from our taxes and stuff, what comes and what has come to so many municipalities from that. And if you take a shave or, all of a sudden the government starts cutting like our 35% reduction in shallow gas taxes that happened before, just to show what that piece of pie would be, so that people understand when we're sitting in budgeting, it does come down to wants and needs.
We could take that tax, that yellow tax, and we could actually allocate what's linear, what's residential, what's farmland taxes within that 77%. And of course it is oil and gas still pays the lion's share of taxes.
Greatly appreciate that, because that was a real eye opener when I got on council. How much of that is made up by linear and M&E. I had no clue that it would be that huge of a portion of our overall budget.
Yeah. I don't know, in the budget package, Krista and Sharon and Nikki put this together, and it's understanding your municipal taxes. And it's only been the last couple of years where what you're paying the municipality is almost exactly the same as what you're paying in requisitions, which is basically downloaded from the province and is in addition to what you're paying for just for the day-to-day services you receive from us.
And part of what we've talked about, another push down is the whole issue that's very high hopes for our area for doctor recruitment.
Yeah.
And what we're having to put into doctor recruitment from the municipality, which can be looked at again as a push down from the government. So that we talked about another requisition to show where that would be because of what we'd have to pay and how much that would cost the county of Stettler taxpayers on a yearly basis.
We did include it, and it would look to be $46 per property.
I didn't see that part.
No, well, it's new, right?
I was just going to mention that, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That is the key. It is the downloading of what the province does. I'm a champion for senior housing, but I also believe very wholeheartedly that it is not the municipality's venue to be looking after the housing, whether it be senior housing or community housing, but the province downloads to us on a regular basis. One more requisition that we have. So.
And with it though, from the oil and gas or M&E and linear, it's been a very good relationships in the past. I'd worked at it from the other side, dealing with various municipalities, including the county of Stettler, where you worked. What was your fair tax? And the problem is, in the last few years, we're getting some major cuts being made by governments that don't realize. I don't even think they really realize what we do for those services out in our areas and what it costs us on our budget with our road infrastructures, our bridges, all the different pieces that we have to maintain, and health services and the communities that their workers live in. That money is all coming back. It's been a partnership, and we're swaying. It's kind of swayed away from that partnership over the last several years, and I think we need to try and draw it back so people realize what it is and that they are definitely in the areas as a partner. The ones that are here.
Mr. Chairman, again, I can't say enough the work that our staff and the management do to put a budget together. A lot of hard cuts you guys presented originally to us. And then I think we had 3, maybe 4 days of deliberations. We didn't take anything at face value. You guys, we threw it back and you guys came back again and we did it again. But as usual, we have a phenomenal bunch that we work with from the council side. And I think hats off to you guys. Thank you very much for looking after the folks of the county of Stettler so well. And I don't think it's always appreciated, but I know from me it is, and from my fellow councillors, I'm pretty sure I can say that we appreciate it very much. So thank you. Makes our job a lot easier.
And for being a public council meeting, I think the majority of our residents must recognize that, because we have nobody.
Well, we have one person, but she might be connected.
She's connected, yes. She might be in Mexico, but we've got
But
police.
she's not really a ratepayer, is she?
There's police commissioners that are going to work in other.
Yeah.
Our communications director should be able to call in from Mexico and work with it. But it is, and I think that's typically needs to be indicated too, is that we have these public consultations for people to come in and see. And we haven't had an overflow of individuals coming in. So I think that it should show some confidence in what we're doing by the majority of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. And staff works extremely hard, and we do try to address all concerns as they come in as quickly as we can. And if we didn't get back to you, we didn't get the email, because sometimes we don't get them, or the ball got dropped. But please give us a call again, and we'll make sure that we respond to whatever inquiries there are.
Does that close our budget discussion?
What was it?